You know how everyone has got their theories about China's future, right? Economic powerhouse, global superpower, a tech giant that could rival the United States. But what if I told you that decades ago, one man predicted all? That's right, Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's founding father, called China's rise like a fortune teller with a crystal ball. Today we're diving into Lee Kuan Yew's predictions about China, what he got right, what he got wrong, and what it all means for us today. You're going to want to stick around for this one because some of these predictions are so spot on it's almost spooky, while others, well, let's just say even Lee Kuan Yew couldn't foresee everything. Alright, before we get into the predictions, let's quickly talk about who Lee Kuan Yew was. The man wasn't just any politician, he was the founding Prime Minister of Singapore, a guy who took a tiny island nation with basically no natural resources and turned it into a global economic hub. He had this no-nonsense approach to leadership, and when it came to understanding geopolitics, he was pretty much in a league of his own. He didn't just look at trends, he saw patterns, he watched power moves, and he was a keen observer of China. In fact, he didn't just watch China, he understood it in a way few outside China ever did. So when he started predicting China's future as an economic superpower, people listened. And let me tell you, he got a lot right. Let's jump into the things he absolutely nailed first. 1. China's economic explosion. Lee totally saw China's economic rise coming. He looked at China's population, discipline and leadership style and saw it as a recipe for rapid economic growth. He said China would become a powerhouse and boom, here we are with China at the world's largest economy based on purchasing power parity, just like he predicted. He knew that China's leadership would push for economic reform as long as it didn't mess with political control, and he was spot on. Number 2, moving from manufacturing to innovation. Now, here's the cool part. Lee didn't just see China as a factor of the world. He predicted it would eventually move up the chains to become a tech and innovation leader. He said that China wouldn't be content with making cheap goods forever. They'd be pouring money into technology and research. And guess what? Today we've got Chinese tech giants like Huawei, Alibaba, ByteDance and Tencent and many others competing with Silicon Valley. Lee called it decades ago. Number 3. Strategic influence through partnerships, not colonies. Lee also had this crazy insight into how China would expand its influence, not by setting up colonies like the old empires, but through partnerships and investments. This is exactly what we see today with the Belt and Road Initiative, where China is funding infrastructure all over Asia and Africa and Central Asia. It's the economic dominance without the military baggage. Number 4. A modern, powerful military. Now, Lee was a realist. He knew that with economic power, China would also want military strength. He predicted that China would build a strong navy and modernize its army, especially to secure its interests in Asia. Flash forward to today, and we see China beefing up its military presence in South China Sea, creating artificial islands and building a formidable blue water navy. Spot on again. Number 5. China's proud, assertive diplomacy. Lee was big on understanding national pride. He said Chinese leaders would have an intense pride in their history and they wouldn't hesitate to stand up to other countries if they felt disrespected. And here we are with Chinese diplomacy, where Chinese officials aren't just defending their stance, they are asserting it globally, mainly using soft power and partnerships, at the same time readying their military if things get down to that level. Lee Kuan Yew saw it coming. But hey, even Lee Kuan Yew wasn't a fortune teller, so let's talk about a few things he didn't get quite right. 1. China's political liberalization, so-called political liberalization. Lee thought that as China got wealthier, it might start loosening up politically, that the middle class might push for more so-called quote-unquote freedom, maybe even quote-unquote democratic reforms. He saw this pattern in other places, so it seemed reasonable, but nope. China's government has stayed firmly in control. Even with all the economic growth, they are as tight as ever on political end. Lee thought prosperity might bring political change, but that's one area where China chose a different path. But this is where China made everybody to question the common belief that countries had to become quote-unquote democratic in order to achieve the type of growth China has achieved so far. 2. Playing nice in the global system. Lee figured China would play by the rules of the Western-led global order. After all, they joined organizations like the World Trade Organization, the IMF, right? But China's been rewriting their playbook. Instead of following the rules, China's increasingly setting its own and sometimes even challenging the existing ones. Lee thought China would blend in, but China's more focused on standing out. China, with its allies in BRICS Plus, has chosen different path: multipolar world order, collaboration of sovereign states. 3. Avoiding confrontation with the Western powers. Lee assumed China would not spread its influence all around the world, especially in Africa and Central Asia. But that's not quite the case. Today we're seeing more stories about China helping other nations to build the infrastructure through Belt and Road Initiative and other global projects. China is far more involved in global political affairs than Lee predicted. This approach puts China in odds with the world's current superpower. China chose to use soft power than bullying smaller nations, unlike certain countries do. 4. Military focus staying local. Lee thought China would mostly stick to securing its own region, not really going for a global military presence, but we're seeing signs that China is being forced to protect its national interest around the world. Today, we live in a different world. They've got their first overseas military base in Djibouti, and they are building up naval capabilities that could protect mainland China and its interest around Asia-Pacific region and beyond. Lee might not have expected this level of reach. So, what's the takeaways here? Lee Kuan Yew had a remarkable track record predicting China's rise. His insights on China's economic power, technology ambitions, and military growth were dead on. But even he couldn't predict everything. He thought China would play by Western rules and maybe even open up politically and choose quote-unquote democracy, whatever that means. Instead, China took its own path. Here's the bottom line. Lee Kuan Yew's legacy as a geopolitical thinker is unmatched, but China's rise has taken a few turns that surprised even him. So the big question now is, will the Western powers manage to stop China's rise, or will China and BRICS countries create a more fair world? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button, subscribe for more stories, and stay tuned. Till next time, bye!